goes live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello. Welcome to Tuesday. And Tuesday brings us my kid sister, Susan.
Hey.
Hi, Suze. She's in Chicago. All right. Is your snow melted?
It's on its way. By either this afternoon or tomorrow, it'll be long gone, and by Turkey Day, it'll be 55.
Cool. That's good.
Raining, but 55.
Oh, that's okay. So, I was gonna start the show today by saying everybody hug a Muslim, because apparently the Muslims in this country are reporting that they feel much more vulnerable and frightened in this country than they did after 9/11.
Well, I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either.
You got a major party running on your demonization.
Exactly. And if you think that's not having an impact, I mean, in what a way. Susan, you can't. I'm beginning to think, and I don't know why conspiracy theorists don't come up with. I'm beginning to think the Republican is working hands in glove with
ISIS.
Yeah, because
they could. ISIS couldn't be writing their script better.
No, everything they do, this kind
of
thing.
And they're being told that. And they don't care. They don't get it.
Demonizing the American Muslim community is a surefire way of making certain that some in that community will become disaffected enough to see us as the enemy and to, in fact, what are they thinking? That has not been much of a problem here as opposed to Europe. The damage they're doing.
Well, and it's the absolute, not only the refusal to learn lessons of our own mistakes, but our pointing to our lessons and using them affirmatively, our mistakes and using them affirmatively. When Trump says we've done this before, he's talking about the Japanese in World War II.
He's also talking about, after World War II, Eisenhower's ugly Operation Wetback, which threw out a whole bunch of Mexicans that had come across the border. I didn't even know about that. Yeah, he's pointing with pride at some of the worst instances in American history where we strayed from our values and our roots. And he's saying,
for which we later apologized and were humiliated or pretended to be until we found it useful to do it again.
God almighty. So anyway, this is frightening to me. Again, I keep saying I'm much more afraid of my clueless fellow countrymen and the Republican Party and its xenophobic crap than I am of the very thing they're trying to tell us to be afraid of. The scariest thing in the world is a mob full of frightened people. And that's increasingly what these Republicans are looking like. I just came across a little article about a meeting that happened in Fredericksburg, Virginia, the other day. This is a normal kind of a zoning board meeting. And it was to potentially say yay or nay to the expansion of a building in the town. The building was the Islamic Center of Fredericksburg. Normally, this kind of thing would have, no one would have been in that meeting, right? Well, there were guys at that meeting, and invariably they were wearing things like sweatshirts with American Flying Eagle on it, and all this sort of like patriotic clothing. And these people, with all these Muslims there that were trying to just get the okay to build an addition on their center, they listen to what this one guy says in the meeting. Nobody wants your evil cult in this county. I will do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen because you're terrorists. That got big cheers.
Well, of course.
And then another guy got up and started shouting that somebody was the engineers were trying to explain the blueprint, what they wanted to build, and some guy got up and started screaming, "We're saying it! Muslim is evil! Muslim is evil!" Cheers, clapping. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
You don't have to imagine. It's right there.
And this at a public meeting with a large group of their fellow citizens who have lived in their city and county, worked in their county, have sponsored a food pantry, and, have been good citizens, blah, blah, blah. And this is what they get. And now, why would that be? I don't suppose the Republicans have anything to do with that, do they? For emboldening people like that, who might otherwise think it but never have the nerve to say it. But if you've got people who are ahead in the Republican presidential campaign who would say the same thing, well, then you got cover. So out they come. This is going to lead to violence against Muslims in America, and that is why I say hug a Muslim.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is.
God. So, it just...
now,
so...
dear sister, may I put you on mute for a second and do some business in my house and be right back?
Yes. Go right ahead. I'm on mute. She's on mute. Yeah, she put herself on mute. You can't mute me. Although I was telling Celine, I woke up today with this. I feel like I dislocated my jaw. I might finally have. This would be. Damn, I used to have disability insurance, but I don't anymore. But this is, for disability insurance, for a lot of people, that would mean, breaking a leg or something. For me, breaking my jaw or having my jaw inoperative would maybe allow disability insurance to kick in, right? Oh, You know, I want so badly to go into this Thanksgiving holiday with a sense of some equanimity and to take, pleasure in my family and my friends, and it's so much harder.
What a nice place to come back. You're taking pleasure in your family and your friends.
I'm saying that's what I want for this holiday, and it seems like the world is conspiring to make things a lot tougher. And, I mean, I spent yesterday warning people not to talk about this at their Thanksgiving table. About Muslims, about ISIS, about terrorism, because invariably there's going to be horrible fights. Don't you think?
Yeah.
So don't. Just don't do it. Anyway. Okay. What else? Obit of the day. That always makes us happier. That's always my favorite part.
Let's segue to something cheery.
It is.
Obit of the day.
It always is. The obit of the day is one of my
favorite. Obits.
I love my obits. Okay, this is Adele Mailer. Pretty woman. She got the name Mailer because she married a guy named Mailer. That would be one Norman Mailer. She was his second wife. I do think she was the wife of longest... Well, maybe not. Maybe.
Was she the brunette with the...
Yeah, she was a brunette.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know that...
She was an interesting woman.
She was an artist. She had been screwing around with Jack Kerouac before. She married him in 1951, and he had just begun becoming Norman Mailer, the famous novelist. He had just written The Naked and the Dead. And their marriage makes Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf look like a tea party. Man, they screwed around, they drank, they drugged, they fought, and some people might not remember this, but Mailer decided in 1960-something to run for mayor of New York City. Can you imagine? And
I remember.
Yeah. And it was 1960. And so he decided to have a big party at his place to sort of kick it off. And because his whole idea of running for mayor was that he was going to be the upholder of the little people in the country, the disenfranchised, part of the guest list consisted of people he rounded up on the streets of New York and just brought into the party. Dispossessed, homeless, whatever. He brought them in. Meanwhile, he tells his buddy George Plimpton, I want you to make sure that we got some upper crusty types there too. So you invite David Rockefeller and you invite the Aga Khan and the chief of police and all of that. So Plimpton did that, but none of them came. So Plimpton's there. These guys off the street are there. Allen Ginsberg showed, as did his fellow poet Delmore Schwartz. The editor Norman Podderitz, and who for some reason Mother calls Putteritz.
Mother does funny things.
It's always annoyed me when she says Putteritz. She also annoys me by the way she says, what is it? There's something female that she's got wrong, too.
No, it's testosterone.
No, she doesn't say testosterone.
Oh, yes, she does.
No. Testosterone. I like testosterone. No. It's something I think what she says with estrogen. Or there's something weird that she mispronounced. But we got off subject. Putteritz. She says There's no U in it. I don't know. It's Potteritz or Podoritz. It's not. Okay. So all those guys are there, and the liquor's flowing all over the place. And Allen Ginsberg, poet, gets into a huge brawl with Potteritz, as Mother would say. And people had to pull them off each other. And Mailer, who was so drunk, and he was a nasty drunk, he was so drunk and so belligerent that he was like coming within an inch of getting into all kinds of brawls with his guests all through the night. Now, this continues till 4 a.m., when he and his wife, Adele, started going at it. And she starts taunting him in front of his friends, taunting his testosterone. Well, where's that going to lead with somebody like Norman Mailer?
What, did he call off and belt her?
Yeah, she derided his manhood. The guests were like starting to get very nervous because they could see Mailer was starting to just look like he was going to lose it. And then she did the thing. The testosterone remarks didn't put him over the edge. What put him over the edge is when she pointed at him and she said, "You think you're so great. You're not as great as Dostoevsky." And he stabbed her.
He stabbed her?
He stabbed her!
Well, I knew it was going to be something. I thought he just punched her.
No! He stabbed her not once, but twice. One of them, he stabbed her in the stomach first. And then, I don't know, he got her in right near her heart. It did penetrate her heart sac. I guess that's the pericardium, right? Needless to say, she ended up in the hospital in intensive care. He ended up in Bellevue.
Well, he's lucky.
He didn't kill her. He's lucky he didn't kill her. So, I got to tell you, I always pride myself on having some of my parties.
I'm just saying, black guys wouldn't end up in Bellevue. They'd end up
in jail right away. In jail.
Island for the rest of their lives.
That's right. So he was charged with felonious assault and committed to Bellevue for psychiatric. And they decided he was nuts. And he said he went nuts when they told him he was nuts. And he said, "I'm not nuts. I can't. It is important to me not to be considered nuts, because my pride is that I explore areas of experience that other men are afraid of. I am sane," he said. But you're right. Yeah, he wouldn't have been in Bellevue. He would have just been right at Rikers. White privilege. So,
well, I mean, for years the stories were the papers were just filled with Norman Mailer's latest brawl and disgusting escapade. I mean, it never changed. That's who he was.
Right. So,
and somewhere in there, then he'd write these impenetrable novels.
Did you find them impenetrable?
I wasn't a real fan. Were you?
I thought The Naked and the Dead was pretty damn good, and I also thought, I want to say the Executioner song. Is that him? Yeah.
Yeah. That was good.
And that was about Gary Gilmore.
The guy in Utah.
Gary Gilmore.
Yeah.
A lot of the others, I didn't know. I thought he was a damn good writer, but what an asshole. Anyway, so they divorced, not surprisingly. And in 1979, so this is like 20 years later, Mailer's being interviewed. And this is by Time magazine. And it gets to the night he stabbed his wife and almost killed her. And 20 years later, here's what he says about that. It was a decade's anger that made me do it. After that, I felt better. So there was 20 years later, he was saying, I guess she drove me nuts and I felt really good after.
He felt like she deserved it.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is then you go ahead to the year 2000. So another 20 years. 40 years after the fact, in another interview, he says this. It changed everything in my life. It is the one act I can look back on and regret for the rest of my life. So it took him 40 years to feel remorse. What does that say? It took him 40 years. As for what she thought of him, when Mailer died, I believe he died about 8 years ago or something.
Yeah, I was going to say 10, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. When she was told he died, all she could say was, he was a monster. So, there you have it. I used to think that if I gave a party and it ended at the hospital, that was a hell of a party.
It's because it happens so often.
I think it's happened twice. I always say, because people, when you have a party like that, people remember it. And they tell stories about that party. So I'm always proud of my parties that end in the Shadyside ER. One actually continued well into the ER.
That's the one I'm thinking of, when the whole party went with you.
Oh, didn't I? I called you from the emergency room that day. Yeah. We're having a hell of a party here, Susan.
I'm in the ER. Guess where I am?
Brought about 6 of my party mates with me.
3 of us need treatment.
Yeah, well, actually, another guest was being shepherded, we thought, to another hospital. He never got there because he decided he didn't want to go, but that was, Roger.
Right, I know.
Oh, God, what a funny party that was. Anyway, yeah, they were dropping like flies at that party. Wonderful party.
And let me just point out, this was not food poisoning.
No. I was bleeding profusely. The other guy thought he was having a heart attack, and we thought he was too.
Roger was having an anxiety attack.
I think so, from being at this incredible party. He couldn't handle it. So, I mean, come on. Got to be able to go with the flow. My parties. God, what a funny party. I don't think I ever laughed so hard in my life. So. Yeah.
You're bleeding.
Yeah, I know. I remember telling the doctor, because he was laughing with the other guys who brought me in, and he was saying, man, blah, 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 this and that, and regaling us with stories about how he had been a medic in Iraq, and, I mean, he seemed bizarre. And I'm bleeding out. I'm screaming, hey, I'm bleeding. Well, yeah, I'm bleeding out here. The nurse came in later, said, man, she said, so are you going back to the party? Because she said, I'd sure like to come.
I get off work in 10 minutes.
I know. I said, no, I think the party's over now. I'm going to go up and clean the blood off the floor. Oh, jeez. Well, anyone want a party? Huh? Stay away from me.
Wait a minute. You can't. Don't start anything. You're due at my house.
That's true. Well, okay. I'm sure I told story. Oh, I have a. Do you mind, since we're just sort of telling stories and that's a good way to avoid the news? I don't think I told you this. Did I tell you, Susan, the story of the guy, a friend of mine who suffered debilitating back pain for years and years? No, because I would have told you this. I got to tell you guys this story. This is a person I've known for 20 years easily. Ever since I've known him, he's been in excruciating pain. He has been through he's had surgeries, which I think usually make things worse, and in his case definitely did. He's had fusions of, vertebrae. He's had implants of electrical crap in his body to, like, I guess, what does that do? It tricks your brain into not getting the impulse from it's something about where you sort of shock yourself and screw up the nerve. It interrupts the pain circuit. So he's had things like that implanted. I mean, now this is a very quiet, kind, straightforward kind of a guy. And I just saw it take such a toll on him. I kept wondering how he could even be sociable when he was clearly in such pain. Needless to say, he got on. The only thing that gave him any relief was opioids, right?
Right.
Yeah. So he's popping OxyContin
So that's how people get
addicted.
Yeah, well, anyway.
Well, quite clearly he did. Whatever. And he was still in pain. That's the thing. Yeah, you get into these pills that you have to have, and on the other hand, you're still in agony, and now you've got two debilitating.
Now you've got an addiction as well.
Yeah,
right?
You got two debilitating conditions. Well, about 8 months ago, he moved to a little town in West Virginia. And I bumped into him for the first time since he'd moved, and this was about 10 days ago. It was at an event. And I saw him. I said, how are you? How are you? And we hugged. And his answer to how are you is he said, I am fantastic. And I looked at him, and his face everything looked different. You could tell he was. I said, what about your pain? He said, it's pretty much gone. I said, after 20 years, what? What made it go? He said, it's such an extraordinary story. I don't even know how to tell. I said, tell me. And I will now tell you what he told me. I will not embellish in any way. And because you'll have to trust that because I know this guy so well, that he's telling me exactly what happened.
So what happened already? Jeez.
Sorry.
Way to make this story take up the whole hour.
Listen, Suze, you want to talk about ISIS?
No, go. I'm impressed.
Okay, so he gets down to, I think it was Lewisburg, West Virginia. And, of course, he's in agony. And he decides he's getting off the pills. And I guess, if I'm remembering correctly, he said he did it by himself. He went cold turkey or something. He said it was the most horrific. He's never been sicker in his life. He's never been more in agony, despairing, but somehow he got off the pills on his own, which is really amazing. The pain...
Well, there's nothing like deciding to do it.
Yeah. The pain in his back, as horrible as ever. Because now he doesn't even have the opioids, masking it a little bit. Even though he's been to 5,000 doctors over, he goes to a doctor in the little town and tells her the whole sad story. And she says, there's really there's nothing else. You've done everything that can be done. I don't know what to say to you. She said, there's an acupuncturist in town. He says, I've tried acupuncture. She said, well, Gus is just wonderful. She said, why don't you just go to him, Gus, the acupuncturist, and see if he could possibly. And Terry, at this point you're thinking, well, what the hell? So he makes an appointment with Gus. He goes to Gus's house. And Gus takes a look at him and he said, well, the first thing we need to do with you is you need to learn how to breathe. And my friend says to him, I've been doing it for 64 years. What do you mean? He said, no, you haven't been doing it. And so think if you've been in pain, debilitating pain for 10, 15, 20 years, you're not breathing anymore. You're afraid to, you know what I mean? You're breathing.
You're afraid to take a deep breath.
That's right. Your breathing is shallow. Your body is tense. So he tells my friend, lie down, and we're just going to start breathing deeply. We got to start there. So that's where it starts. Now here he condensed what he said, went on for an hour and 15 minutes into, I'll do it too. He said, I started to breathe. And I don't know how long that went on, just quietly. He just told me, just keep on, this quiet breathing. And then he said, this acupuncturist starts chanting. In some, I don't know, he didn't know what, and walking around him. He's very aware he's walking around him. And this goes on for like a half hour with Terry breathing and the guy. And every once in a while, Terry said he would pull on my hair or I felt a feather on my face. He said it was all this bizarre stuff. Now, Terry ain't like that. He ain't new agey.
Right,
he ain't
right.
like that. And yet he kept on breathing. And then all of a sudden, he said he felt something coming up from his gut. He said, I felt this physical sensation that he said it just sort of like rose up in me, and I began to sob. I began sobbing. I was crying so I couldn't get, there was so much pain, he said, and I was crying and crying. And this went on for a long, long time, and the chanting's continuing, and the this and the that, and he is sobbing and sobbing. Nothing's being said. Anyway, after an hour and 15 minutes, he was spent. His body couldn't do any more, and he was just lying there. Gus, who's also spent, having been running around him and chanting, gets him off the table, and Terry says, my God, the pain is gone. He said, the pain is gone. And do you know what? It has stayed gone. Is that not the most amazing story?
Well,
okay,
for having a good cry.
But what does that say to you? That says that what was manifested in him as physical pain
Was emotional.
had an emotional thing. And when somehow it was emotional pain that was coming out of his body, and then the body was free of it. I get goosebumps because we're always separating our bodies and our hearts and heads. And my God.
No, frequently our head makes our body sick.
Very
and sometimes
sick.
our body tells our head to be sick.
That's correct. That is absolutely
it's all a
correct.
System.
It is. And but I'm going to add one more thing, which really is goosebumpy. And again, if I hadn't heard it from someone who I know not to be a nut, to be a totally straightforward guy, He's sitting on Gus's couch, and he's spent, and he's just trying to process what's happened to him. And Gus walks over to his window and looks out into his yard. And Gus says, "Do bears mean anything to you?" And Terry said, "Bears?" He said, "Yeah, bears." And no. He said, "Well, this is pretty amazing, but there's a bear in the yard." Now, this is West Virginia. It's not like there aren't bears around. This guy said he'd only once before seen a bear in his yard. And there's a bear in his yard. Now, I'm just thinking, if you were New Agey, you would say, "Oh, my God."
There's the physical manifestation of all of the bearish hell I've been living through.
Something, or we let out all of this incredible pain and energy, and who knows, this bear was drawn out, and I don't know. That could just be that's me trying to make it into something that's maybe a little whacked out. I don't know. But is that not an amazing story?
Yeah.
So I told that at the same event to a guy who writes what's called creative nonfiction, and who actually invented the doctrine. The genre.
Well, what's creative nonfiction? Interesting nonfiction?
No, it's essentially doing, I guess a historical novel could be considered, like Gore Vidal's Lincoln would be, I think, essentially creative nonfiction. He's telling...
Okay, but that means that creative nonfiction isn't nonfiction. Okay, go ahead.
Well, yeah, because you make up maybe...
You're making shit up.
So you can tell us whatever. Creative nonfiction. It's a whole school of whatever. And I'm telling him, "You got to hear this amazing story I just heard." So I told him, and his reaction was, I said, "You should write about this." He said, "I would write about Gus," is what he said.
Right.
"I'd like to meet Gus."
Right.
That's interesting. We got a call. Hello?
Sorry to interrupt your great story with a bad pun, but he just couldn't bear the pain anymore.
There you go. There's something about a bear. I told someone else, and they said, "Oh, bears are like considered extremely spiritual animals," but that gets New Agey and stuff.
Yeah, a great story though.
It is a great story, isn't it? And knowing him, seeing the transformation, seeing this relax. It's not like every pain is gone. He said, "I've gone from a 9 to a 2. Yeah. And a 2 I can do.
I very rarely get back pain, but the day before yesterday, I had a lower back pain. Mm-hmm. My first thought is, okay, I know I got a lot of stuff to do, but I got to relax. So I just stopped doing everything, sat down and watched some stuff on Netflix, and the next day I was fine.
I think a lot of times it's a matter of relaxing, right?
Yeah.
Sit down.
When I get it, that's usually when I'm, I don't know, there's a ton of stuff to do and a ton of different things going on in life. My back will hurt, my lower back. And it's not like killing me, but it's annoying that I can't do anything. So I just stopped, sat down, said, some stuff's going to have to be late. And binge watched the show on Netflix.
There you go.
Next day I was fine.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, okay. We'll take the pun.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving. All right. Get out of here. Bye.
Bye.
Jeez. Oh. Yeah, I meant to tell that story before, and I forgot to tell it, but isn't that mind-blowing?
That's a good story.
It sure is. It sure is. And, couldn't happen to a nicer guy who's been through hell and back again, so... He's an
he never actually acupunctured him at all.
No, although Gus said to him, "Why don't you come back in a few weeks and let's try some acupuncture and see if I can't, get you in even a better spot." And he did try, and nothing happened. So there you have it. But God, to imagine that it was really some kind of an emotional release he needed to let his body, when he's had surgeries and all this shit. Amazing. Says something about for witch doctors, because that was like a witch doctor-y thing.
I've been. Excuse me. I have no voice. 1 second. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I've been walking around with terrible foot pain for years and years and years that I was sure was related to my back. And, no one could figure out anything else, so I just sort of ignored it. And I moved to Chicago, and it disappears. Now, I figured out it's because I'm walking everywhere and sitting almost not at all.
You know what? So it was
Did
caught.
You just catch my frog?
Yes. So it's caught.
I just slammed all the way through the wires.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Susan. So it. So your foot pain was St. Louis based and suburban based.
Right.
You lived in suburbia, so you got in your car all the time.
Right.
Now you're urban, and you're walking.
I'm urban, I'm walking, and I have a dog, and I'm really walking.
Right. Right. That's good. That's really good. All right. Now what are we going to do?
I don't know.
Oh, I've got another thing. I've got another.
What?
I do. I have something. Maybe you saw this too. I don't know. But this is another weird thing. I started to tell this yesterday, and then a caller came in, and then I never got back to it. But here we go. Research suggests that, let's say you live with somebody, and all of a sudden they're laughing at stuff that they never used to laugh at before. So, like for instance, I would start laughing at the Three Stooges.
You're having an affair.
No, you think that's what it means? You're having an affair? No, you have to try harder. Because I don't laugh at the Three Stooges. So Imagine if the Three Stooges are on and I am knee slapping, hardy, har, thinking it's really funny.
It's the early onset dementia.
Exactly. Don't laugh. That's exactly what I'm going to say.
Yeah, that is what it is.
They say that if you know someone well and then they start laughing at like something they never would have laughed at before, that is as good a diagnosis of impending dementia. And it can be 10 years ahead of when dementia would be, actually... What's word? So if somebody used to like satire and all of a sudden is laughing at physical humor, it really suggests that something's going on with their frontotemporal lobe, and it's a certain kind of dementia. It's not as common as Alzheimer's. But humor is an unconventional way to think about neurodegenerative disease, but we like to think that memory is the thing we should look for, right? But change.
Yeah, I don't think memory is the thing, because it's hard to distinguish between with just normal aging and dementia with memory. But when you start looking at things that involve loss of your inhibitions in any way, whether it's laughing or violence or just that kind of emotional behavior change, that's dementia.
I don't want it. Anyway, the doctor that did this test said that, humor is like a stress test for the brain. The same way you're on a treadmill to test your cardiovascular system, complex jokes stress the brain. And so if you stop laughing at those complex jokes but start getting the low humor, slapstick, it might say something.
Right.
Just telling you.
Well, so far I don't like it.
What? You don't like what?
Slapstick.
No, I don't like it either. But Suze, if I ever laugh at it, then you'll know.
Yeah, I know. Or
She's going.
you catch or you catch me watching all of those stupid like adolescent male movies. Kind of humor.
Yeah. Although some you watch, don't you?
No.
Did you see Trainwreck? Would you call that stupid adolescent male humor?
I didn't see Trainwreck, so...
I don't know. I mean, that's Amy Schumer, so that's not male.
Oh, that's that Amy Schumer thing, yeah. No, I didn't see it.
Yeah. Dawn writes, that's an amazing story of your friend and Gus. I believe that sort of healing is real. Reminds me of the story in the Bible of the woman with the issue of blood. I don't know that story. I also felt she healed herself when she touched the hem of, she touched Jesus' hem and got healed. But Jesus was the catalyst to unleash her manifestation of years of whatever she may have endured emotionally and physically. So glad your friend no longer suffers. Thanks, Dawn. That's sweet. No, I just think we don't pay enough attention to... I know I am prone to psychosomosis, and it doesn't mean you're nuts. It just means your body... Like, I'm not in touch necessarily with how I'm really feeling. It's my body that will tell me I'm unhappy. It'll take a physical form because I just keep on, I don't know I'm depressed. I don't know I'm this or I don't know I'm that. But all of a sudden, I'll be, have a bad stomach or headache.
Or a migraine. I used to get migraine as soon as whatever awful thing was happening was over.
Right. So exactly.
I could make it through the awful thing, but then I would react with a migraine.
Yeah. Well, you know what would happen to me? I could not, for years in my 20s and 30s, I could never relax enough to vacation. So the minute I went on vacation, the minute I left my stressful workaday world, I would get literally a blinding 24/7 headache that never went away till I went back to work. I mean, it was unbearable. The kind that was, and many a vacation I went on, and just sick as a dog the whole time. And I then read that the former Surgeon General Everett Koop, in a profile I read on him, it said he had the same problem, and he simply stopped even attempting to take a vacation because the minute the stressful environment was taken away, then he would respond to the stress, having time to do it, and would become ill.
Right.
So I guess that's what happens to me too. Not anymore.
Well, but I would suggest that one needs to, if that's how stressful one's life is, one needs to figure out some better way.
But I would think he liked his life and I like mine. I was having a hell of a time in television and radio. I just couldn't stop. Hello, we got a call. Hello, caller.
Right. Oh, hey, it's Mary.
Mary.
Let's talk about your friend Gus.
Okay, okay. Gus is the acupuncturist. I don't know Gus.
Oh, I'm sorry, your friend.
Yeah.
I think he had something called tension myositis syndrome, and that's when the body depletes oxygen to like its weakest point to create pain to distract you from your psychological issues.
Wow.
So all that breathing would put the oxygen back. And the doctor that discovered this, he wrote the mind-body prescription. And I don't know why it hasn't caught on more because it's really, like I read it and it helped me. And I'm thinking it's because nobody makes any money because you basically cure yourself. So.
You bet that would be what it is. So tell us again what the name of the book is?
It's called The Mind-Body Prescription. It's written by Dr. John Sarno, MD. His last name's Sarno. His most famous patient, this is how I heard about him, was Howard Stern, of all people.
Howard Stern was one of his patients?
Yeah, he had back pain and shoulder pain for 20 years.
And this guy got rid of it by just having him breathe, essentially?
Yeah, and he kind of just tells you to tell your body to stop it and send oxygen where it needs it. And it's really simple. Like you don't like. I was really skeptical. I'm like, this isn't going to work, but it does work.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
I'll send you an email with.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
Okay,
Mary. Interesting. Bye.
Well, there's these oxygen bars all over the place, and it makes sense to me.
I guess. I always thought it was stupid. I remember saying when people started buying water in bottles, I thought, what? I'm never going to buy water. And then oxygen, I'm not going to buy oxygen. I remember when we used to have full-service gas stations, and then they decided we could do all the work ourselves. And I remember being stunned the first time I had to put air in my tires to find out I had to pay for the air.
You're kidding.
No.
Well, most places you don't have to pay for the air.
Well, around here there's an awful lot. You got to put a quarter in. Then you can get some air. Asking people to pay for, having to go to the bathroom.
How much air does a quarter buy you? Is it like on a timer?
Yeah. I think it's about 3 minutes, which isn't really enough to go running around all four tires.
It's not enough to go all the way around all four tires and check each pressure.
And in fact, there's gas stations here that I go to that advertise very proudly free air. Isn't that wonderful?
Well, I just think it's amazing that you can go to a gas station and I'm used to no one being there to help, but I would think that they might have a pressure gauge behind the counter that one could borrow. Nope.
That's amazing.
I end up, now my car comes equipped with a pressure gauge.
I have a pressure gauge.
Yes, but did you used to carry a pressure gauge?
No, I did not. But now it's every woman and man for themselves, and you dang well better carry one. Anyway, I think they're neat. Amazing little tools.
It's fun to know how to take care of yourself.
Kinda, sorta, yeah. I know you're better at it than me, but yeah, it is. You feel empowered, as they say. Speaking of empowered, one of the 60s era radicals was a guy named Todd Gitlin, and he then got respectable, and he, became an academic, and he teaches journalism and sociology at Columbia. And he's written a lot of books about the 60s and other things. So he wrote a piece in, I think, this Sunday's New York Times about this thing I keep talking about. What's going on with the kids on campus? What's happened? That they're in need of safe places and all that kind of stuff. And he came up with, I think, a pretty interesting, because he was a student activist. He likes what he's seeing with the students getting active and demanding things. But then he says, then they start demanding things that are like so absurd,
right,
that they undercut themselves. He says, so what's going on? And he said, why are today's students, why do they have such a widespread feeling of acute vulnerability, followed by pretty vicious attacks on anyone who disagrees with them?
I know.
Why?
I think it's the parents who have surrounded them with cushioning their whole lives and assured them that everything that they do and think is splendid.
That's what he ends up with, too. He says the extremity of this reaction we're seeing suggests that these kids, as brilliant as they are and as, politically active as they are, they feel their vulnerability suggests that they lack confidence. They lack confidence that they can reason and act on their own. And it is because he thinks they have been cosseted as children. He says
Well,
there's...
how can you have confidence if you've never actually, overcome anything?
Yeah. He says he really thinks that we're witnessing a cultural mood that you can't reduce to political, economic considerations. He says there's this generalized anxiety and the only thing you can think that's different of this generation of college students is they have been supervised all their lives. These are the kids who had play dates, who had everything,
and whose
organized.
Parents did their homework, and whose parents
did their homework,
fought their battles,
and so he says they're lashing out now. They feel vulnerable, and the thing, I was trying to explain this to an old lefty friend of mine who wasn't aware that there was this thing happening on campuses with triggers and blah blah blah, and she was stunned by it. And I said, well, what I don't get is it's like as if it's what made me angry at first, but now if we start understanding where it's coming from, that it's really coming out of the fear of parents transferred to their kids, right? Fearful parents.
Well, this whole concept of a safe place. Let me tell you something. There ain't no such thing.
Right, exactly right.
And the parents, it starts with parents demanding that the schools be safe places. And I can remember saying, exactly how do you want me to accomplish that? Do you want me to lock the doors? Because that doesn't work. It just it creates a problem with fires and getting out. And by the way, if you deal with that, then the only thing a locked door does is make someone on the inside open it for someone on the outside. So locked doors don't work. Do you want to see? We would try and explain why, no matter how safe we made the school, it wasn't going to protect you from every single thing that could possibly happen. That is a false premise.
Well, but here's what else I think. Just there's so many factors feeding into it. So you have media now that exists to make people fearful. And I can talk about that till I'm blue in the face. And so this generalized fear and anxiety, and parents were made to fear that their children would be abducted, that their children were not safe. And so a kid couldn't just go out and explore the world on their own, which is what they used to be able to do. And once you do that, you learn that you can, in fact, navigate by yourself. It's how you get self-confidence.
Well, I remember being a little girl and walking home 3 blocks in the dark from Lori Cole's house.
Sure.
And I used to sing, when you walk through a storm,
hold your head up high.
Because I was always terrified. So I'd sing the song about not being afraid.
You didn't call and say, Mom, come and pick me up.
No.
And she wouldn't have. What are you talking about? Walk home. Right. So, but I find this fascinating. Maybe that is where it's sort of starting. And if you start demanding, he says at his own university, they stopped teaching Ovid's Metamorphoses, pulled it out of the syllabus, and it used to be a required core course.
Yeah.
Because students objected to Ovid's accounts of rape. How are you supposed to? If you're
I don't know.
that fearful.
This is saying, okay, kids, put your fingers in your ears and go la 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 la, and don't hear anything upsetting.
But so
why are the grown-ups allowing this?
Yeah, why are the grown-ups acquiescing? That's if you go to a university not to be safe, you go to a university, in fact, to be quite the opposite.
Yeah, to find the courage to be unsafe.
Exactly, to be subjected to ideas that are unsettling, upsetting. You can't have a university with safe places. It's antithetical to what a university is. And with teachers giving out trigger warnings and all this stuff. So the thing that really bothered me about it, though, too, is what it's done to the idea of what feminism is. Because in our day, a young woman who called herself a feminist was a young woman who had confidence. I can do anything. I am woman, hear me roar. I am strong. And now to see that within just 35, 40 years, a sense of feminism on campus is, I am weak. I am in need of constant protection. I am vulnerable. Words have to be, censored around me. I cannot hear stories. I cannot listen to things. This will trigger horrible reactions in me. My God, it is exactly what we at the beginning of the feminist movement fought against. This idea of women as in need of protection. We said, we don't need your protection. We don't need your... So I guess my anger at it is that it's taking feminism and turning it friggin' upside down.
Well, it's doing all sorts of things. I mean, the safe place issue at the University of Missouri in the middle of the quad when they're throwing the media out, I mean, it becomes a celebration of ignorance.
Yeah.
Really, and you have journalism, professors or adjunct professors in there, throwing the media out too. You're going, really? This is the lesson, because this is anti-American. This is unconstitutional, and you're the people that are supposed to be teaching these people about that.
It's amazing.
The marketplace of ideas is, by definition, not a safe place.
Exactly. So...
And that's to be celebrated.
Well, I think that you got now a Todd Gitlin pushing back on this, trying to understand it, but saying this isn't right. I think because this does have a lefty and liberal base in political correctness and all that kind of stuff, it is the left, the elders of the left, that need to push back.
Yeah.
Really do. Because this is...
I have this conversation with my daughter, who defends the idea of safe places and triggers, and I just
well, she comes out of that environment. She comes out of that environment.
Right.
Well, does she think that because of her experience, that if she's in a class, her personal experience and tragic experience, would she think that she couldn't be in a class that was talking about the Iraq War?
No, and she is all the time.
Okay. We got to call her quickly. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Lynn.
Yes.
Hello, Lynn.
Yes.
Hey, Lynn, I'm turning you off here. Hey, Lynn, can I just read you, it's Thanksgiving, and I just want to read one thing. It's kind of off subject, about the Indians. This is from Lane Deer.
Go. Is it very long? Because we're...
No, it's short, a couple sentences.
Okay, because we're out of time, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Before our white brothers came to civilize us, we had no jails. Therefore, we had no criminals. You can't have criminals without a jail. We had no locks or keys, so we had no thieves. If a person was poor, that had no horse, teepee, or blanket, someone gave him these things. We were too uncivilized to set so much value on personal belongings. We wanted to have things only in order to give away. We had no money. Therefore, a man's worth couldn't be measured by it. We had no written law, no attorneys or politicians. Therefore, we couldn't cheat. But now, visible progress is everywhere. Jails all over the place. And we know these jails are for us Indians. What a pity that so many of us don't appreciate them.
Wow.
How about that, Lynn?
It's wonderful. Good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you. All right. So's.
Yeah.
Start cooking.
Okay, I'm cooking, and Babu's on her way.
Is she on the way now?
She's on the way now.
Okay. Everybody off the road.
Watch out.
93-year-old careening down the interstate. Careful. Okay. See you, Sue. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, you guys, tomorrow, and that's the end of it for this week, but hope you'll join me. Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.